This is Joel. This is not Personality Hacker. This is Joel's tweet. He said, we've all heard about the INFJ door slam. I don't buy it. It's been my experience that INFJs are more likely to ghost and drift away from a relationship than to create a disturbance by slamming the door. I think INFJs wish they could slam the door, but almost never do. Ooh, your thoughts?
Some people commented back, I think, about nailing the door shut, keeping the door shut, having a severe boundary once it's created. But I think that's post-processed. I don't think that's like in the moment of, I'm sure there are INFJs out there that tell people off and like, get out of my life and slam, quote unquote, slam the door. I don't think that's common though. I think it's more common just to drift and then put up barriers to never let anybody back in.
So somebody said, I find people are taken aback when I assert my boundaries because those boundaries are hard to spot if you're not looking carefully. I've had multiple sticky ends with friendships, etc., when I drew a hard line and it was seen as an attack. So that's this idea that a boundary that an INFJ creates would end the relationship in the other person's mind because they weren't used to this concept of boundaries. But then another person said, I agree, but we feel the closure as though we've slammed the door. We do not make a scene. If we make a scene, there's still hope. The door slam simply describes the finality. The moment NI gathers the last bit of information needed to judge a relationship ridiculous. So then on that person's side, it's that the door slam is their sense of their finality. I like that. I thought that was interesting that they said that if they make a scene, there's still hope. That's probably true, huh?
So the slam speaks to, the slam is actually not the disturbance. The slam speaks to the finality and the severity of the cutoff. Is that right?
Yeah. This other person says, I think the door slam describes the experience of the person who has been shut out. They try to come back to the INFJ, who has always given another chance to find the doors closed forever. There's no slamming on my end, but when I'm done giving chances or someone hurt me or my loved ones as much, I close off any further engagement. They become like a stranger. I may never tell them the door is closed because I don't owe an explanation to a stranger. That's interesting.
And I'm going to posit something here that might be controversial for you ENFJs. I think ENFJs are more likely to do a disturbance, like more dramatic, like slam the door in the moment. I don't know that to be true. That's anecdotal.
You think who are?
ENFJs.
Oh, ENFJs.
Or EFJs in general, but ENFJs, INFJ versus ENFJ. It would be my assumption that ENFJs would be more likely to slam the door and make it a dramatic slamming of like, well, that we're over and, stomp out or something like that.
So they're talking about just being done.
Yeah.
Like an ENFJ might do it with like I think that's the thing about the door slam is this concept of the slam in the metaphor feels like it's everybody's aware. Like the door slammed. I think that's why the metaphor is maybe sometimes not really like I've tried to figure out how INFJs are unique in this. I think everybody can cut somebody else out of their life, but I think it's like I don't think that INFJs experience it as like a slamming, like they're doing it il proteste and it's done. I think it's more like the nail concept. What's that?
Sure, curling. It's like curling.
Yeah, it's just like Bill Burr talks about curling when you just like let it go and it just floats away from you. Yeah. But I think what they're saying is that it could feel like a slam door to the other person when they finally realize that there's no more chances. I think nailing it shut is probably that's probably a better metaphor, is nailing a door as opposed to slamming it.
I can see that.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because I think what's interesting is that as an ENTP, looking at it from the extroverted feeling, introverted thinking polarity, but in reverse, I don't ever feel the need to truly cut somebody out of my life because I don't think that I'm as vulnerable. Like my parents have like perpetually done things that I'm just like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like every time they do something, the phrase "you got to be kidding me" like floats up. But then I'm like, but why would I mean,
every child though.
What's that? Every child.
Don't we all look at our parents as adults and go, "Are you kidding me?"
I don't want to believe that my children are going to be doing that to me when I get older.
They totally will.
Or when they get older, they're just going to be like, "You got to be kidding me, right?"
So,
but yes. Oh, Emily says, I don't have Twitter and I'm not sure what you guys are doing, so I'll comment here. Yeah, no, what we're doing, Emily, is, as Joel mentioned, if we do something like this on a regular basis, some of the things we're going to try out, especially since nobody's called in, by the way, to a live call-in test. Feel free to call in to talk to us live. The phone number is right there. But
she's nice about it. She's
since-
like, feel free. I'm like, do it. You've got to do it.
Oh, I think people can hear
Like,
my
just
thinly
feel
veiled.
free. Don't hesitate.
Feel free to call in to talk to us live on the air. Ask us questions. But because nobody has, it's working, right?
I kind of imagine this when I was a kid. I imagined this being like I used to watch with my mom as a little kid. Regis and Kathy Lee.
Mm-hmm.
It was on like ABC every morning at like 9 o'clock, where they have like coffee and talk about.
We're gonna be a morning show.
So like a morning show on TV.
Lisa says some of us are not in the U.S. Okay, Lisa.
I think
You
could
get special
Skype.
dispensation.
Skype. No,
Yeah,
we'll have to figure that
make
out.
it happen. No, if you're not in the U.S., you can just chill and hang out and watch. But what's happening, Emily, is that because we don't have anybody who's called in, it's like I don't know. I feel kind of rejected, honestly. But because we don't have anybody who's called in, then we're just filling air. Because we were thinking if it was sort of like a morning show, let's pretend it looked a little like that. We would do things like read tweets from the audience and have a little conversation around it, and maybe do a call out to people in the community and talk about what's going on, with PH and some of the cool things, promotions we're running. And it's sort of, we're trying this out. We're just sort of trying out what would work and what would be interesting.
I think we need a plant
Mm-hmm.
right here.
All
There's a
right.
gap.
Um,
Of some sort.
Melissa says, don't hesitate. What's that like? Yeah, that's the problem. We got a bunch of INJs not hesitating.
Oh, INJs aren't problems.
I didn't say they're a problem. Okay. Don't mastermind
Discord.
discord between me and our audience.
All right.
You're already the cooler looking person. Giovanni says, oh, Giovanni, you have a question. You should call in, Giovanni. Are you in this? If you're not in the United States, I'll read your question. Otherwise, you have to call in and ask it.
That's the one thing about doing this here. You're letting
Mhm.
everybody off the hook.
Nope.
Because they're gonna start to just expect to type it in here.
If you're in the United States, Giovanni,
my-
you got to call in.
My suggestion would be you don't go here because you're going to train people to go
Okay.
here.
I'm not looking
I
at
mean, that's my suggestion.
I'm not looking at
I don't know that to be true, but my suggestion is you're going to, wherever your attention goes, like wherever we're addressing questions,
Yes.
that's where people are going to go to.
You're
give
accurate.
questions.
And I was looking at the comments just because I was getting used to looking at the comments because
Cheris has some screeners.
okay, I was looking at the comments because we were doing all that technical stuff, and so I kind of trained my brain to start looking at comments. But you're right, the tech has been solved. I'm going to set my phone over here.
Cheris is live right now screening someone. All right, so we'll figure out this works. So she's gonna basically what'll happen now is she has them in the screening room, ask for a name and like kind of a topic, general topic, and then we'll know that's ready to go once she puts them back on hold, and then she'll go to the next person. So there's two people in the queue.
Okay.
And so her and us are at the top of that list. So we punch that in. And
Super excited.
yeah, this will be great.
We did it last time. We had like a bunch of people call in last time.
It's tough on a Friday afternoon.
It is Friday, isn't it?
I know we did it on Friday. Well, some of you are listening in from like Australia, so I don't know, what is it like tomorrow?
It
in
is
the morning,
tomorrow.
I think, in Australia. I mean, not tomorrow for you; it's tomorrow from us.
No, it's the future.
We're living in the past for you.
It's the future. They have flying cars now.
I felt so silly when we were at our profile training event in November. I couldn't figure out how far Los Angeles and New Zealand were from each other. I thought they were on opposite sides of the globe, and I like literally had to like walk across the stage. Like, okay, New Zealand's here. I went like time zone by time zone to figure out, because it's a day ahead, but it's only a day ahead, like a few hours behind. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still in daylight together, and you can talk on the phone and stuff. You're just a day off, but as far as like if it's 10 o'clock in the morning there tomorrow and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, it doesn't feel that different. So it was really confusing me. I couldn't picture it. I had to kinesthetically like walk across the stage to figure it out.
And then you realize that it's like this.
Yeah.
It's not like all around the globe.
I felt very
it's
silly.
more like sort of like that.
But yeah, so I think it's people in Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and probably Africa that it's the most tough to join,
Mm-hmm.
because this ends up being like dead in the middle of the night for them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's true. The Europeans always struggle in profile training when it's like 7:30 at night for us, and it's like 1:30 in the morning.
All right, we've got
Ooh.
somebody in the hold
Okay.
room with a name.
We
So you
have-
see that name? So all
Yep.
you do, yep.
So I'm gonna go live, and I'm gonna say as soon as it's live, "Hi, Sierra. You are live on the air now."
Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
Wow. Hi. Hi. This is amazing. This is kind of surreal. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Oh,
Good. She asked you a question.
I'm very good. I'm an ENFP, married to an ENFJ, and your book and your podcast have really just sort of been like transformational for me and my husband. It's totally changed our lives.
That's awesome.
I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for letting us know that. Did I pronounce your name right? Is it Sierra or is it Kiera?
Sierra, yeah. And my husband is Jesse. He's also watching, and he's a huge fan, but he's feeling a little shy right now.
Huh. Hi,
Okay.
Jesse.
And ENFJ, I don't know how, but
ENFP and ENFJ, huh?
Yeah.
Where do you guys live?
yeah. And on that note, if you have any advice, we're learning how sort of compatible and incompatible we are. But it's been so good for us, just to kind of understand each other in this new way.
What's been the biggest thing that you've noted? Like, what's the biggest aha you've had recently between the two of you? You're two different types.
I mean, he's the aha guy, right? But mostly for me, I feel like he understands me now. I think I used to drive him a little crazy with all my ideas. And now he finds them more inspirational instead of, something that he has to, go after every single thing that I come up with.
Right. Yeah. That I have also seen that be a challenge. That specifically with Joel as a visionary, every time he has like a new idea, and he's like, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do." I'm like, "Okay, we're doing this thing," and then like a little bit later on, he's like, "Maybe not that one." Okay, now I know what
about
we're
that.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We have a little bit of that going on, but yeah, we sort of have like a new language. I feel like with all this, it's been really just a few months for us, but it's changed everything.
That's fantastic. I don't know if I
Yeah.
have any general advice to give you because I think everybody's dynamic is a little different. But I will say that I have noticed something as somebody who uses extroverted feeling or harmony, even though it's in my 10-year-old or tertiary position as an ENTP. And Joel, an ENFP who uses introverted feeling or authenticity as his co-pilot or auxiliary process.
Right.
Like you do. I have noticed there's
learning that about sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say learning that about myself has really like kind of given me a direction in life in a way. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's what it's been awesome.
I have noticed that there's one phenomenon that happens, and you can tell me whether or not this resonates with you. It might not be something that happens at all in your relationship. But this was a game changer for me as somebody who's using extroverted feeling. When Joel is emotionally overwhelmed, he performs better when other people are emotionally overwhelmed with him. And he calms down when other people are in an emotional spike. So what I observed happening is that he would use his introverted feeling to sort of emotionally aikido me into feeling the same emotion he was feeling.
Not consciously.
Not consciously.
Not at first.
Right.
And because my extroverted feeling little baby 10-year-old Harmony just slurps it all up from him. I don't do this with everybody, but I do it with him. It would slurp it up. And then let's pretend he was feeling anxious. I would start feeling super anxious and he would spin me all up. And then as soon as I was anxious and spun up and basically processing his emotion, he would just go whoom and then just be like, oh, Zen in the center of the eye of the storm. And he would just be like the Zen master after I was all spun up and I'm processing his emotion for him. Does that make sense?
Right. No, yeah. I definitely I seem to have a good ability to pass on the anxiety to my partner.
Okay, so
and I haven't quite found the Zen yet, but I could see sort of that, yeah.
It took me years to figure it out, and when I figured it out, I was so mad. I was furious that was what was happening.
You're still mad.
I'm not mad. No. I'm processing it. But I was so mad because I hate the emotion of anxiety. Like, on the podcast, I talk about my list of unacceptable emotions, which is a ridiculous thing for a person to have, is unacceptable emotions. But I'm using introverted thinking, so I have a list of unacceptable emotions I just literally hate. And anxiety is at the top of the list. I hate anxiety. I will do anything
Sure.
to not feel anxiety. And Joel, he's an Enneagram 6. In the Enneagram system, he's a 6. So anxiety is his, like, you know, it's his bread and butter. So he'd get all anxious and he'd like push anxiety off on me, and I'd like slurp it all up. And then I was feeling anxious, which I loathe. And then he would get all zen about it, right? Because I'm the person who's all spun up. And then he would be able to solve the problem and feel a lot better about it. And so I don't know if that's a phenomenon that's happening with you, but anytime I hear a dynamic between an FP and an FJ, or somebody who's using introverted feeling, that could be a TJ, and somebody using extroverted feeling, that could also be a TP. Whenever I hear about those two functions in relationship with each other, I'm always like, this is a thing that happens. So if it's happening for you guys, there are strategies to work around it. So I don't know if that's something that resonates with you.
Well, thank you. No, that's good to know. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And what do you do now?
Awesome.
How do you get into your Zen? Because Oh no, sorry. I was going to ask Joel. Joel's been working with an energy coach, and
awesome.
This has not happened in a while. And so, Sierra, would you like to hear just like a little bit of ENFP wisdom from? Oh,
please, absolutely.
ENFP doing energy. Okay.
Sure.
I just put you on the spot.
Yeah, thank you for that. No, it's cool. Well, again, I don't know if you resonate with what Antonia talked about. If you've been able to track and see that you're doing this, I know this is something for me. So I don't know if all of ENFPs or all FI users are doing this to other people. I was made aware of this pattern for myself. So I don't know if that's something you resonate with. If you're able to track that, I would kind of divert a little bit from what Antonia said and say that, you know, I could talk a little about energy stuff and all that, but one of the things that I kind of wanted to encourage you to do is begin. One of the reasons I discovered this is I've been tracking my motivations and seeing why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I realized that one of our disagreements or something, we discovered this together, and part of it was me co-creating the discovery process of why am I doing this? And that why am I doing this question that I keep asking myself on so many levels has been very powerful for me as an ENFP to be able to see what I'm motivated around. I don't know if that's been useful for you or not, if you've tried that.
No, absolutely. That's kind of what I was saying before. I think learning about how authenticity is important to me has helped sort of guide me to seek authenticity and to, you know, for myself. So that's been really helpful. Yeah.
Because
that's awesome.
There's the behaviors we do, and then there's the reasons why, and both of them take a level of awareness.
Right.
And I think a lot of people they start with the awareness level, and then getting that core motivation is something I think that could really amp up your FI from my standpoint, from my
motivations. Yeah.
So.
Sure. Yeah. No.
Because in
Thank you.
Like when we're fighting, or when we're about to enter a fight, right? Like you can kind of feel it, right? The tension starts to build, and there's less simpatico, and there's more headbutting, and then there's more like you know, like circling the wagons, and like, you know, you just feel it, like just all of a sudden you went from cooperation into like line in the sand, and before that would turn into like, I mean, sometimes it could get really out of control, but I've
really ugly. Yeah.
It gets so ugly. I've noticed that Joel, when the wagons are starting to circle, before we would just get into our dynamic. We just get all spun up into our dynamic. And what Joel's doing now, working with this energy coach in particular, is he just stops everything and he just goes, and he'll even say it out loud sometimes. He'll just go, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Like, it's just this total pattern interrupt. It just disrupts the fight instantly. He just goes, why am I doing what I'm doing now? And I'm just like, I'm all like, I'm, you know, I've got I'm like sharpening my sword right now. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you doing right now? He's like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And then he'll just start idea generating why he thinks he's doing this. He'll just go like, I think maybe I might be doing this because, and then he just gets super honest and vulnerable. He just goes, I think I'm doing this right now.
Cool.
Because, because I want you to feel what I'm feeling right now, because I don't think that you're hearing me, or I think you're invalidating my feeling. So I'm trying to make you feel what I'm feeling right now so that you won't invalidate it. He'll just start saying stuff like that. It's like, it's so hard to stay mad at somebody and like keep trying to attack them when they're just totally neutralized everything by just getting into the space of curiosity about themselves. Right. Like, why am I doing that?
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been
that's
fantastic.
Really powerful.
Oh my gosh, it's been so great. And so, like, I mean, I guess a person, and sometimes because I'm in the dynamic of the fight, sometimes I'm still kind of itching for the fight that we were about to have. So I'll keep pushing a little bit because I still want, like, I'm all prepared to go to battle. And all of a sudden he just like put down his weapons and went, why are we doing this? And I'm like, what do you mean? Pick your sword back up, buddy. Here, we're going at it. But it's like, if he stays in that space where he's just like idea generating and curious about why he's doing what he's doing, I start to follow suit, and I'm like,
I guess disarming.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm doing what I'm doing because, like, I want to battle this because I feel like this has probably been a long-standing battle, and this is like a stack, and I feel like this is the final straw. And then we get into that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So
Sierra, thank you so much.
Yeah, we have a few interactions like that.
Oh,
yeah.
No, here's the thing.
No.
I was like, are we keeping you hostage?
Yeah.
I feel like we're answering questions you never asked.
You didn't ask.
So I was like getting ready to let you off the hook, and then you started talking and saying something cool. And I'm like, oh no, wait, sorry.
No, this is totally surreal. I mean, like, you guys are kind of like rock star stuff, so we really appreciate this. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in, and hopefully something in there is of some value.
No, that's you giving me a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. Thanks for calling in.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sierra.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye. Thank you.
So I put her to mute. So am I actually hanging up?
So no, she can hang up herself.
Okay.
Or you can dump her call by hitting the X button.
Okay.
So it looks like she hung up herself.
Okay.
So
and the next person is...
hold it. Wait, before we do this. So the one thing is we can see the time of how long they've been on hold since they were screened by Cheris.
Okay.
11 minutes.
And
so Emily's been on for 11:43.
Okay.
The other thing is, are you able to hear her okay?
I was able to hear her perfectly.
Great. Fantastic.
Yep. Okay.
And then the last thing is, if you ever did want to slice these up into smaller topical segments, we need to make sure that we're not like kind of creating a difficulty in editing. Like I was looking down, we need to finish strong and start strong with these, and then we can always do stuff in between if we're gonna do that.
Sounds good.
But I think we'll get a rhythm going anyway. It's
so.
gonna get easier and easier.
Yeah.
So.
I think we're just trying to make it happen. Okay. I'm going to put Emily on. Is this my Emily?
It is.
Hi.
Hello. I've missed you.
I missed you too.
Who's my Emily?
ESFP Emily. Profile training.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Joel.
So for people that don't know what my Emily means, do you want to give some background?
Yeah. Emily, well, when I say my Emily, Emily's she was profile trading student. She's an ESFP. She's an amazing human being, and she and I have connected on a number of occasions. So when I saw her pop up on the live, I was like, oh, Emily's here. And then when I saw you there, I was like, is it that Emily? So that's what I mean by my Emily.
Hi,
How
Emily.
are you doing?
Yeah, Emily D.
Yeah.
I'm good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we haven't talked in forever. So, like the last time I talked to you, you were traveling.
I know. A lot has happened. Yeah, I think it's been almost a year. Last summer, I did that big 2-month camping trip with my husband Michael, and stopped doing my business. Which actually this pertains to my question. I sold 51% of my business to this woman that I thought I could trust, and which I'll get into that. But and last summer I was just like in a really bad headspace, and I had to just take some time off, pretty much the whole year, to just recover. But that's a separate story. So this lady, and I believe she's an INFJ. I'm not totally sure, and I have questions.
You know this is live, right? And
yeah.
So anybody can see this. So just before you keep going, okay. So make sure you're clear.
Can you see this?
I don't know. It's just, it might end up on YouTube or something. I just want to make sure you're cool with that. So.
Okay, don't tag me. Don't tag me.
All right, keep going. It's fine.
Her name is Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, yeah.
Let's burn this one.
If she sees it, she sees it. I mean, this is reality. So I believe she's an INFJ. I'm not sure. So I was wondering if INFJs, I don't know a whole lot about them, if they tend to wear masks. That's one of my questions. And I'm like up 99% sure she's an Enneagram 3, wing 2. So I don't know if that doesn't seem like it matches up with INFJs. Maybe it does. She seems kind of like a outlier. But any questions so far?
So INFJ typically wearing a mask from your perception, like kind of presenting one side of herself, but maybe not authentically backing that up with another side of herself. And then you're asking a little bit about her Enneagram type, but maybe that would be a separate.
Is that
question.
common with INFJs?
I don't think.
Is that something that's a thing?
Yeah.
Common with humans.
I don't think 3s are a common INFJ Enneagram pairing, but I have seen it. I have a friend who's a 3, who's also an INFJ.
The pairing. I see. I
The
think you meant
pairing.
wearing a mask.
No.
All humans wear masks.
No, she's saying it's a common for
gotcha.
INFJs to also do Enneagram 3s. I think that it's more common. My observation has been that the most common Enneagram types for INFJs are like 1, 4s, 1s and 4s I see the most often, but and 2s sometimes. But I do have a friend who's a 3. And the challenge is that if a person is an Enneagram 3, you haven't asked a specific question, but you just kind of hear where you're headed.
Yeah.
And so it also depends on what Enneagram subtype she is. Like, is she a social 3, a sexual 3, or a self-preservation 3? Because all 3 of those 3s are very different. And if she's a social 3, social 3s very much have a tendency to wear masks. Masks are one of the biggest challenges that social 3s have.
It's either social or self-preservation. Probably social, I would guess.
Because self-preservation 3s are a lot more. They're like the least 3-looking of the 3s, because they're the ones who want their work to basically do their advertisement for them. So the self-preservation 3s are the workaholics. And they're the ones who just achieve and work and they want that to be the thing that gets everybody impressed with them. And they have a tendency to be sort of falsely modest, where they'll work super duper hard and want everybody to notice that. But then if you try to give them kudos, they'll be like, no, I don't want kudos. Sexual 3s are more about the relationship and building up the person that they're with in the relationship, and like having that Enneagram 3 validation be about the person they landed or the person they're in a relationship with. And then social 3s are the ones.
It's definitely not that one.
Yeah, social 3s are the ones that are the most mask oriented. They want it to look like, they're the ones who tend to do the most sort of, they don't have to be necessarily fake, but they are a lot of sizzle, right? And they may or may not bring the steak with the sizzle.
Are you cooking?
They may not what?
Are you cooking right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually am.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet. I was stirring my macaroni and cheese on the stove.
No, you know that phrase, somebody's more sizzled than steak? They can bring the sizzle, but they can't bring the steak. Okay, that's like an old-timey quote, I guess. But the social 3s are the ones who bring the sizzle, but they may not bring the steak. So they're a little bit more flash, a little bit more. And so I would imagine if an INFJ were a social 3, one of the challenges that FJs have in general is when they're using extroverted feeling, they want to, they oftentimes don't want to ruffle feathers, and they oftentimes want to sort of match. They want to match what your expectations of them are. They want to match high morale and the equilibrium. And so they want to put their best foot forward anyway. Oftentimes people who use extroverted feeling or harmony do anyway. So if they're paired up with an Enneagram type that has a tendency to wear masks, then that's oftentimes how their extroverted feeling or harmony process is going to show up for them. So that's why that pairing, like if you see INFJs paired with other Enneagram types, they'll have they'll have more of a honest relationship with their introverted thinking. Their introverted thinking will show up a little bit more assertive and brutal, and telling it how it is. But if it's paired up with social 3, they're going to use their introverted thinking more technically. They'll use it for technical things or to build skills. They'll use their introverted thinking to be more competent and capable, so that they can have a better presentation for that social 3 thing. Is that making sense?
Yeah, that sounds pretty spot on for sure. And I thought she was an ENTJ for a long time, but I was like, I don't know. But the Enneagram thing, I think that is why it just didn't feel like it matched up. And I don't know if that introverted thinking tertiary, you'll have to tell me if that is prone to like twisting truths and kind of like telling half truths and like spinning things. I've noticed that, and I've never seen that before in that way.
I have noticed in SFP NFJ relationships, specifically SFP NFJ relationships, where the NFJ will not be careful with their information. They're not necessarily intentionally lying, but they're not being careful enough with their information to make sure that what they're passing along is truth. And for the SFP, because the way the information got cooked up with an INFJ is a combination of introverted intuition and introverted thinking, that feels suspicious to the SFP. Like it triggers their baby or smaller introverted intuition. And so they become suspicious. And when they become suspicious, when the information doesn't line up, they don't necessarily project positive intent of care. Like the most positive intent is that this person just wasn't being careful. The worst intent is that they were lying and intentionally spinning. And I think that can sometimes be a source of misunderstanding between SFPs and NFJs.
Yeah, I don't want to, I'm still investigating, but I'm pretty sure this has been planned.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And not every NFJ is well intended, right? Not every person is well intended.
I am pretty overly trusting, and I like to just think the best of everybody. This is honestly the first time that I can think of that I've ever been burned. Because I feel like I have a pretty good radar and gut, but last summer I was not in a good headspace, so I just was off. So I wasn't able to like really. I remember red flags, but I just wasn't. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm learning a lot of lessons through it.
Yeah.
Business partnerships.
But the
are
reason
tough. Like in the best of circumstances, business partnerships are tough. I mean, it's just like any kind of business agreements with people is just it is a tough thing to do, regardless of the personality types involved. I think.
I don't recommend it unless you're married, like you guys. That's different. But I guess I was mostly asking about the door slam thing. So this entire year, I'm under the impression everything's fine and things are going well. And then she's investing in, and the second she got 51% this month, she basically just blindsided me and says she doesn't want to be my partner anymore. She wants to buy me out and she wants to cut ties. And I was like, wow, it just kind of really caught me off guard. And I don't know if that's like a door slam. I still don't understand the door slam thing, but this feels like that. And I'm not, I don't know. I'm going to push it open because I'm not letting her get away with this. Can't.
Yeah.
So I would definitely just from a business side, you want to address some type on this in a minute, but from a business side, I would give you advice from now on going forward. This is a big lesson you learn in business. Is the most important thing in business is not it's ownership, but control is more important. Like controlling something or having influence over it would be the most important thing in business. It sounds like you might have put yourself in a position where you're not totally in control of the situation now at this point. So you are now dependent on the relationship side of it. From what
I completely like relinquished control. I relinquished control. I didn't want to be in control. I was done. I was overwhelmed.
Well, and that means you're not anymore.
That was my.
You're beholden to a lot of things that you might not want to have happen, but that was the risk you took when you relinquished that control. And that's probably just a lesson for business. And it doesn't mean you can't do that, but it's almost like if you're going to relinquish 51%, you have to almost like my parents when I was a kid said, don't loan anything to anybody expecting it to get it back. Like it wasn't being selfish or anything. It was just like just assume that if you're going to loan somebody something, they're not going to give it back to you, and you're giving that to them as a gift. If they give it back to you, that's fine. But if you loan out something and they don't give it back to you, then that way you're not holding on to something that much. And that reminds me here of going, when you gave 51% away, you kind of basically said, hey, I'm giving away control. You might as well have given away 100% at that moment, right? Because you gave away enough control to where she's able to do what she wants to do on her side. So that's like a business idea that I think a lot about. But that's just
I appreciate that.
That's something you learn, right, over time.
Right, and I wasn't going to go.
Yeah, there's like power.
No, go ahead.
There's some sort of power control issue for sure. You're right, Joel, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't going to actually go to type because I think in business, it's almost like understanding the person's type is good for knowing how to approach them and talk to them. But when it comes to business, it almost kind of doesn't matter sometimes. And if somebody's doing something shady, I mean, knowing their type is good for, it's like a node in the system for how to navigate through it. But I would say if you're at a place right now where she's not talking to you, like you have to go through mediation of some form. Like, like it had, I mean, it's, I don't know how expensive it's going to be, but I would suggest going through mediation, because you can't not be talking to your business partner. Like, that's just ridiculous. And saying, well, I don't want to talk to you and I just want to buy you out. It's like, well, what if I just don't sell? Now what do we do? So yeah, I would get some mediation involved.
Yes, for sure.
Thanks, Emily, for calling in.
All right. Sorry you're dealing with this. We'll have to connect later and talk.
Yeah, no, the future is bright.
Yeah.
The future is bright. I'm back.
Good.
Right.
Emily D 3.0. Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Emily.
Emily.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So
just before you take the next one, I just want you to know that countdown timer is when that hits 0, this will be cut off live immediately. So if we're in the middle of a conversation or something.
Okay.
That it's enough time now, but I'm just giving you a heads up on that, just so you have a tracking of that. Because I'm watching it, but I just want you to watch it too.
Okay, so we have 40 more minutes before we're done. All right. So we're gonna go to the next caller, which is Giovanni, about ENFP masculinity.
We had somebody else that called in that was on here that dropped off as soon as they talked to Cheris. It like cut them off or they dropped off. So hopefully you can call back.
I framed it.
Sorry.
I framed it.
I was just telling that person to call back. I was still doing some housekeeping. My apologies. Why don't you go back and do the framing again? That was so beautiful.
Okay, Giovanni, don't say anything.
I screwed it up.
Frame it.
I screwed it up.
I was framing it for him. Okay. So so the next caller. Oh, Cheris, can we turn that down just a little bit? Okay, that's right. No worries. Okay. The next caller is Giovanni, about ENFP masculinity. Hello, Giovanni.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling me out. I had to step out the call, but
that's
it's
cool.
worth it.
Where are you at in the world, Giovanni?
I am in South Florida, Miami.
South Florida.
That's like
I love
Joel's
Miami.
favorite city.
Miami's awesome. So, what was your?
Miami's nice.
What did you want to talk about today?
Yeah. So my question is based on ENFP and regarding to energy. So I think the presumption is that ENFPs, like their natural baseline is more on the feminine energy side. So I wanted to see how it ties into like kind of growing masculinity and stuff like that, and how you've experienced it.
No. So, talking about masculinity in our current climate feels like my old seminary days when I was in Christian seminary, and I would want to talk about something like meditation, and all the Christians would be like, "You can't talk about that here. That's unacceptable. We're Christians. We don't talk about meditation." So when I talk about masculinity, it's always kind of a fine line for me to be around, because I never know how the current culture is going to feel about it at any moment. It feels very dangerous to talk about sometimes.
I think you should just go with it.
So I don't know exactly what you're asking for the question. You made an assertion that the ENFP person shows up more feminine. I don't know if any type is more feminine or masculine in their energies. So, and also I'm talking about it in energies, not like the actual men or women or any kind of gender or anything like that. We're just talking about like energies, how they show up. One of the challenges.
Yeah.
One of the challenges, how are we defining those energies, right? That's one of the challenges when we start talking about this kind of stuff is, what are we even talking about when we talk about masculine energy versus feminine energy? So that's one of the first questions that we have to kind of address. And a lot of people disagree on what those definitions are, even to have a conversation about it. So I can tell you how I define those energies and how I see them. This is very subjective and personal to me, and that might be helpful to you. Do you identify as an ENFP, or do you identify as another type that is associated with ENFPs?
I am an ENFP and type 7.
Okay, so Enneagram 7, ENFP, fantastic. So I personally, in a general sense, define masculine energy as vigilant, still, somewhat stoic, present, and in a way focused on securing the perimeter for the people that are around. So that's kind of the general sense of how I define that energy. And I define personally, again, my personal viewpoint is that feminine energy is more playful, dancing, expressive, creative, and movement oriented. And enjoys playing in a space that is secured, whether that's a specific singular energy or a collective energy. It appreciates the space being secured so it can be more expressive and not have to worry about safety or danger coming. It can just be playful and expressive in that. So that's how I see masculine and feminine energies. I believe I possess both inside of myself. So as an ENFP, I do my own securing the perimeter for my more feminine expression of my energies to be able to be more playful. So for example, if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I want to be in a very creative flow, I will end up ensuring that I don't have any appointments coming up. I don't have a stopping point. Like all the things, the structural things I need to make sure of can be secured so that I can be more in the creative moments and expressive and be more present, right? So how I like to look at this, all this stuff is instead of seeing ourselves as people interfacing with other people, is how do these two energies show up inside of me as an ENFP? And I think that would probably be the best mileage for you to be able to start down this journey with yourself to see which of those maybe be more prevalent in yourself, because I think some people are wired to have one, more dominant than the other inside of themselves. I feel like I'm a little bit more, I feel like I've got a lot of the creative, expressive, feminine, dancing, movement side. And I think in the later years, like in the last 10 years, I've been hooking up more of the secure the perimeter side. And it feels to me, sometimes it doesn't feel as much masculine and feminine as it is more of a juvenile versus of an adult energy. And that's not to say that the juvenile is the feminine of me. I think it's more of the boyish nature of me. It's more of my boyish nature that I've grown more into a man around, and I've helped create some playfulness here. Now, I think there is a feminine side of me as well that likes to come out and play. Is this too abstract, or am I making some sense? Again, we're kind of talking about these energies, and these things are really hard to define. And a lot of people have differences of these.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect, like total sense to me. Just kind of give you like a quick background of me.
Sure.
So I'm 29, going into my 30s. I'm dating an ISTJ, so she is like complete polar opposite from me.
Sure.
And like you said, like now it's getting to a point where like it's getting more serious, and I'm wanting to kind of tap in more into like like securing resources and just making sure that everybody's getting taken care of around me. So I see that as kind of like tapping into the masculine side of me, but I'm trying to see like if in doing that, like, is that the right, how do I say, like, what's the process kind of like to get there, to get like kind of like that decisiveness? And you get what I'm trying to say? I know I'm
Absolutely.
kind of rambling a little bit.
So the first question I asked, so you are talking about gender roles or roles in a relationship where I don't know if you feel authentic to be more of the masculine energy. Like, in other words, some couples, it's just not, the man isn't the masculine energy and the woman is not the feminine energy, like from my experience, or the person that's in the relationship. Like, and we're talking about just, kind of traditional coupling right now, right? Because I'm not speaking to other types of coupling. Mm-hmm. But in traditional coupling, like sometimes the woman is more the breadwinner, the person that generates the resource, and there's a lot of stay-at-home dads, or a lot of like the gender roles aren't necessarily just cut and dry as they used to be. So the first question I ask is your role that you want to play authentic? You each might want to play. Is that authentic to both of you? Is that something you want to create? And if that is, then that's, keep going down that road. But I think that's the first question is, are you okay with just being in a role of more of the expressive person, and she's more of the masculine energy in that? I don't know. Or maybe both of you can play some differences around that. So that's the first thing. And you don't have to answer that right now. But let's assume, but maybe I should check in with that. How does that resonate with you, that question?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like where we're at in the relationship right now. And I mean, I want to, like the way I see it, like I feel like it's kind of like an obligation, like a rite of passage where I should have to tap into that in order to kind of like fully express myself and kind of like be more well-rounded. But then at the same time, it's like, am I being inauthentic in thinking that, like, should I continue to do that, or am I going against like kind of my core values kind of thing?
Well, is it going against your core values? That's a good question. Does it feel out of alignment to you? Does it feel like it is not the true you to step into more of that framework? Or does it feel very authentic to step there?
it feels like it should feel authentic to me. Like it's kind of like an external. It's expected, especially like in American culture.
Especially in Miami
But
culture.
it still doesn't like
Miami
me.
culture in particular, right? 'Cause it's
Yeah,
a very
exactly.
polarized culture.
Absolutely no, and in the Hispanic community, it's very like conventional gender roles, and she's like that also, but it's like you're right in your assumption that I think kind of she has more of the masculine energy, and I'm trying to see like if me tapping into mine, if it would kind of throw off the polarity of the relationship kind of thing, like for the better, or am I making a mistake in doing that? That's kind of just where I'm at.
It's been my experience that couples, and you might want to speak this too, couples tend to fall on kind of opposites of that, the polarity there. Not always, but it does seem like, and it might not even be like super far, like it might not be super way over. There's like a continuum, right? Of like, again, let's just say masculine and feminine energies or something real, which we're kind of buying into the abstract of that right now. There's the masculine side, like so way over there, and then the feminine side way over here, and that's a continuum. And people fall all the way along that, all sorts of different genders and preferences, and people fall everywhere on that spectrum as far as how they show up energetically. And the what I hear you saying right now, and I'm kind of throwing some pattern recognition and speculation in here too, is that currently you're more taking on, maybe you're both kind of closer to the line because you've been trained that there's certain gender roles you're supposed to adopt, but you're taking on more maybe like if you were a little bit further away from the center, you're taking on maybe more of the feminine expression of it, and she's taking on more of the masculine expression of it. And your question is, if I cross that line and I start to exhibit and take on some of the more of the masculine energies, how's that gonna throw the relationship maybe out of frame or create disturbances, or will actually help us get along better? And it's hard to know without knowing all the the nuanced details.
Yeah.
But I would say, go ahead. You want to say something?
No. No, you were about to say, but I would say.
I don't remember
and then
now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to
I'll
say
think about it.
that. So I remember reading a study a long time ago that indicated that there's sort of the universal principle that polarity creates attraction. And so the more polarized people are, the more attracted to each other they are. That's just sort of a universal principle. And it seems to hold true in a lot of, like mating rituals too. I also remember reading a study that indicated that the more polarized a person is, the more they're looking for somebody who's equally polarized on the other side. So the more masculine somebody shows up as, they're looking for somebody who's equally as feminine on the other side. Whereas where you get closer to the center, it's almost like you're looking for somebody who's sort of a mirror of where you fall in that spectrum on each side. And I've noticed that with Joel and I, it's not one thing. It's not like I'm the feminine presence and he's the masculine presence, or he's the feminine presence and I'm the masculine presence. I've noticed that it's almost a dance. Like we're stratified. There are some contexts in which, because I would agree with his energetic definitions. I believe that the masculine energy is more still. I think it secures the perimeter. And I think that the feminine energy is more sort of moving and creative. And there are some contexts in which he's the more still energy and I'm the more spun up, sort of, not spun up, but sort of the dancing, moving energy, the creative energy. And then there's other contexts in which I'm the still energy and he tends to be the one that's the more dancing, movement oriented energy. And so for us, I haven't noticed it's one thing or another. I've noticed that it kind of depends on the context. But the important thing is that we're matching up in all of those, in that we do have a polarity of attraction in all of those moments. The moments in which he and I are attempting to occupy the same masculine space, like we have a similar masculinity in that space, that's oftentimes when we butt heads. Or the same thing with the feminine energy. Yeah. When he and I are occupying the same feminine energy in that space, that's oftentimes when we're butting heads, or causing problems or experiencing problems. So it's almost like it's complex. It's not easy. It's not one thing or another. And I think the other thing that Joel said that I think is very relevant is that oftentimes we get a sense of what masculinity or femininity is, and they're actually expressions of childhood. I've noticed a lot of and Joel might be uncomfortable with me entering this territory, but I've noticed that a lot of times when people are talking about like toxic masculinity and then they start explaining what toxic masculinity is. For me, they're just describing boys, right? This is just boyishness. And it's not toxic masculinity, it's immature boyishness that needs to grow up. And so, and the same thing with, I've heard explanations of toxic femininity, and it's like, well, that's just girlish behavior. That's a girl who needs to grow up. And so actual femininity and actual masculinity, we're also talking about the developmental time periods of them. So when you say, I'm thinking about moving into a more, I need to move into more masculine space, and I think ENFPs seem to be more feminine. Well, first of all, I would thoroughly disagree with that assessment. I would actually say that ENFPs can be some of the most masculine men that have this little, you can tell they're tapped into their anima being the feminine side of them. You can kind of see that Joel's got he's got longer hair and his shirt's unbuttoned to, it's sort of center of the chest. And he's got this he's got flair going on. I think of this in sort of the Russell Brand sort of way. He's got that flair, but that's him sort of integrating his anima, his the peacocky sort of playful nature. But when you actually engage with him, he's very masculine, very assertive, very sort of leadership oriented, very, not that the feminine can't be leadership, but sort of he's got all these sort of traditional masculine traits. And so he's actually very masculine with obvious feminine sort of a seasoning. It's an obvious feminine seasoning on top of a very masculine sort of form. And so I wouldn't say ENFPs are more feminine in general. I would actually say that all the ENFP men that I've met, the overwhelming majority of them are like that. So that the feminine anima side is obvious, but it's not necessarily interrupting that core masculinity. And I've noticed it with the ENFJ men and all sorts. I mean, all the men that are supposed to be more feminine, I think that those stereotypes don't run true. That said, of course, obviously every individual person is unique and they're going to go whatever direction they need to go. So when you say okay, so I'm about to hit 30, I'm in a relationship with an ISTJ woman, she seems to be bringing more masculinity, or she has masculine traits. We grew up in a context or in a sort of a society that says that we're supposed to be taking on traditional gender roles, but we're not, we're trying to sort of force ourselves or shoehorn ourselves into that, but that's not really feeling right. And I'm about to turn 30, and do I need to move into a more masculine space? And the answer is that, I would say move into a more mature space, whatever that means to you. So grow up. That's the number one message for every human being in my observation is grow up. You need to grow up. And I'm not saying that to you specifically. I'm just saying almost all of us need to do more maturing. Does that mean that you will become a more masculine person as you grow up? Probably. Because as we age and as we mature, we have a tendency to notice that our more feminine, men that notice their more feminine expressions, actually were more boyish expressions. And for women, the same deal. They're more masculine expressions were sometimes more girlish expressions of fear. I've known a lot of women who think of themselves as tomboys, right? They're more masculine. But really what it was is that they had a lot of fears. And so they felt like they needed to secure the perimeter for themselves, and so that they were super defensive, and that defensiveness appeared to be aggressive, and so they believed that they were more masculine because they thought of themselves more aggressive. When they grew up, they rested into themselves, they discovered more of who they were, they started to mature, they actually found a more feminine space because they weren't, I guess the word is sort of overcompensating for that fear that nobody was taking care of them. And so when they found a space and they created a life in which they felt like they were being secured and taken care of, then actually, interestingly enough, as they matured into that and as they secured the perimeter for themselves in their life or found a situation that helped with that, they found a more feminine expression of themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going too abstract either. But that said, the reason why we're mentioning all that is I almost wouldn't think of it in terms of masculine and feminine right now. I would think of it in terms of maturation. I would think of it in terms of who am I and what do I look like at my most mature, at my best potential, and then head that direction. And if you feel like you're getting serious with the ISTJ and there's a question around your maturation process and your maturing and whether or not and how she's going to respond to that, I would say extend your dating cycle. Extend give yourself time to get into that fully mature space and allow yourself to see how she responds to it. And then when you see that response, if she goes, oh, here's somebody who's showing up as a mature masculine that's helping secure the perimeter for the, for the relationship, that I don't feel like I have to be doing it for, for whatever reason. If she goes, that actually makes me relax, and then I can show up with more of a feminine expression, then that's awesome. If it's actually that she is a more masculine energetic expression, and that you guys end up butting heads, but you are going the direction that is authentic and honest for you in your maturation, then it's just a matter of like, maybe you're not fully compatible, or maybe you need to work out some of those compatibility issues. Does that make sense too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say it's probably like the first one that you mentioned, kind of just like where she wants that. Like I can tell that that's what she wants, kind of for me to kind of like just grow up and actually reach my potential and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So then I would ask, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning, is it something inside of yourself that you feel is inauthentic to do that? But you're saying she actually would desire you to be more expressive that way, more in maybe, those quote unquote traditional masculine energy terms. Do you feel like part of it is, do you feel actually inauthentic about it? Or do you feel almost like, am I allowed to do this? Is it permission you're seeking, or is it internal permission you're seeking, or external permission you're seeking? I guess would be the question.
Good question.
And those are kind of different fronts you're going with, right? If it's internal versus external permission. If it's external permission, screw it. Just, you're going to have to do it and make it, you can't worry about what the external world is telling you can't do or not do.
Yeah. You
got to do what's right for you, right? Your FI has to do that, introverted feeling. If it's internal permission, that's a little bit more of a question. Are you struggling with it? Is it something you really want? You just don't feel you have permission to do it inside or outside? I don't know if you thought about that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I mean, that's a big one. But I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, because I'd like to say that I don't care about what people think, but like I'd be lying if I didn't say that it doesn't bother me. But I think it kind of goes into like internal in the sense where it's kind of like, I guess, a lack of self-confidence, and that maybe I'm being inauthentic and like kind of growing into that, because I have shown, I feel times where like I'm in like my zone and I feel authentic, I feel like I'm at my best in that time. But then there's times where it's kind of like a lot of self-doubt, and then that's kind of when I started like questioning it, like, am I being authentic? Is this the right like path that I'm on right now? So it's kind of just like a lot of like questioning.
So I have a book that I recommend to all feeler men, and it's just a tool. You might disagree with the book. You might read it and go, this doesn't work for me. Or you might read it and go, this is really powerful for me. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think it's by Robert Glover. I could be wrong, the author's name. But it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. You can find it on Amazon. And I've been recommending that to feeler men a lot. And it's been really helpful for them, because for feeler men, it's been my experience and the experience of clients and people in our world. Feeler men have a very challenging time because we don't resonate with all the quote unquote stereotypical things that all dudes do, like guys do sometimes, jumping on the metaphorical motorcycle and riding off with all the buddies and stuff. Like sometimes we're like, this doesn't feel right. It feels odd to me. But we don't resonate totally with getting rid of all those things that are sometimes masculine. And so we struggle to go, am I okay? Is there something weird with me? Am I wired to, like, what is going on with me? And it can be a very big struggle. But that book is powerful because it just gives you some framework, some things to think about. Again, you might just toss out and say, I don't know, it doesn't work for me. But No More Mr. Nice Guy was really, when I read it, I was like, this is some good stuff. And I've been recommending it to feeler men, and they've been responding back to me to say, thank you for that recommendation. That was really enlightening and insightful for me. And it was it's designed for men in relationships in order for them, and I think it's probably written toward feeler men, but it's designed for men to realize kind of what's going on dynamically and how they can show up and have some ideas and skill sets and tools and how they could show up differently to create a better relationship. Because that's really what you're after. I would assume you're after a really cool, connective, amazing, co-creative relationship with this person that you love. And it doesn't mean you have to show up in a particularly stereotypical way. You can maybe show up in a different way. However, if you feel wired to do something, you might need some tools to get there. So that would be a book I'd recommend. And then if you hit me up offline, I can also give you some other recommendations and things, some things I've been thinking a lot about. If you can find your way to email our support or something like that, I would give you some more resources and things that I've found for myself that have been really powerful. So hopefully that gives you some things to think about, Giovanni.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. That was very enlightening, guys. I appreciate it so much.
Cool.
Okay, absolutely.
All right, man.
All right. Thanks for calling in. Good luck to you.
Yeah. Enjoy the warm,
Bye-bye.
sunny palm trees.
I know. Joel's just like could not be more envious. All right, we have time to take one more. We have 16 minutes before Blog Talk Radio boots us off. So let's see if we can do this last call. John, an ENTJ mistyped as an ENTP. Live on the air. You're now live, and we have to somehow keep our answer in less than 16 minutes.
Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi there. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Where in the world are you calling from? Where are you coming from?
I am calling from just south of Baltimore.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Our neck of the
Glen
woods.
Burnie or something like that.
Jessup actually. Well, I'm shocked to hear you say Glen Burnie like you know the area.
I lived in Baltimore for like 5 years, so I lived in Hamden.
Oh, cool.
And,
Yeah, and we're in
then
Gettysburg.
Towson, and I live in Gettysburg now.
Yeah, so we're in
not
the
that
area.
far. And my kids live there still, so I drive down there every other weekend.
Oh, cool.
Anyway.
All right. How can we help you?
Cool. So the reason I'm calling in, and I know you already have seen this, when I first started listening to you guys about a year ago, just through listening to the way you speak about the cognitive functions and whatever, I had typed myself as an ENTP because I thought I really resonated with that type. Now, when I would read descriptions of like the looped behavior and grip behavior, I was like, kind of, and there have been some events in my life recently that have caused me to realize that I did mistype myself, and I believe my best fit type is ENTJ. And I also took an Enneagram test, and I've taken it many times, and every time I get 8. But I would think to myself, that's not me. Like, that's not what I want. Like, I don't want control. I don't see myself as this aggressive person that wants to control everything. And like I said, I've just gone through some stuff in my life recently that has caused me to understand that subconsciously a lot of that stuff has been happening, and there is this desire for control. But I grew up in a whole family of feelers, and so I just feel very, very strongly about personal connection and about not hurting other people and that sort of thing. And so now I kind of have this dissonance between what's going on subconsciously and what I really want, because I really, really value interpersonal connection. And it's like, it seems to me like this desire for control and this aggressiveness is just going to get in my way at every point. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice as for how to reconcile those two sort of parts of myself that are battling right now.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, the more you understand about the system and yourself, the more you realize you're not an ENTP, you're an ENTJ. That you keep taking the Enneagram test and it keeps coming out as an 8, but you don't want to see yourself that way because it seems like 8s are stompy, trompy, and aggressive, and you don't perceive yourself that way either.
Well, I would say that I didn't perceive myself that way now. I've started to kind of accept that that is the way that I am, and I don't like it, and I've been trying to work on it, but it's just like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, as an Enneagram 8, I feel like the desire for control and the desire to be invulnerable is always kind of going to be there, even though it's not really something that I consciously want. And I'm just wondering how to reconcile those things.
Okay, so the bit about growing up with a bunch of feelers means that you have probably integrated into probably even your introverted feeling or authenticity 3-year-old, you've probably integrated a lot of important values around how to treat people. Like you're supposed to treat people, I'm assuming things like with respect and with honor and not run over the top of them and steamroll them and be kind and considerate and show courtesy, those kinds of things. Is that effectively what you're saying, is that's all been sort of inculcated into you? But then on the other side,
I would say so.
Okay, and so on the other side, though, you've got these two go-get-'em parts of like wiring in your personality type. Like the ENTJ, go for what you want, get it accomplished, figure it out, strategize, make it happen, along with the 8, which is a desire for control and for lack of vulnerability and to want to feel like you're invulnerable. And so you've got all of these values that were inculcated into you, and they're going directly against what you're starting to come to realize is, or what you fear is, that these values that you've been given or that you've adopted are going in contradiction with how you're naturally wired. And that's the challenge. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. So, so there's nothing that says that an ENTJ or an Enneagram 8 has to be an asshole. Like, there's nothing that says that. All right. You can be a very, you can be an incredibly kind, compassionate, and sort of protective Enneagram 8. That's how a lot of Enneagram 8 show up, actually, is that they're very protective of the people that they love. So do you know which subtype you are, which Enneagram 8 subtype? Do you know if you're sexual, social, or self-preservation?
I believe it's sexual.
Okay. So sexual 8s are even more fun because they're the ones that just disregard all the rules. They just do things the way they want to do them, which is even better, because that's effectively what you're saying, is that there are these sort of concepts about how these types show up, but you're going to do it your way, right? Like, you don't have to necessarily obey or observe how these like profiles have been written or set up. The other thing is that ENTJs have an extraordinary ability to get what they want accomplished, but that does not mean that they do it with, in a Machiavellian way without any ethics. That can happen. And sometimes when it happens, it's so devastating, it gives all ENTJs a bad rap. But the reality of the situation is that almost all the ENTJs I know have a very squishy nougat center. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, okay. So that's like, my brother he acts like he's the biggest asshole on the planet. And the reality is that if a kitten comes in the room, he just melts, right? Because he loves cats. Like
Yep.
That's just how it is, right? And so I don't know if you have to do a lot of reconciling. I don't know if you have to sort of reconcile being wired in these ways and then not being an asshole at the same time. I think that the number one thing that you can do to reconcile this is to let go of stereotypes.
It sounds like there is a problem you're trying to solve, though, and that might need some thinking around, because you ask these questions for a reason. Like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Why is this a question on your mind?
Where's the friction point?
Yeah, what's the reasoning this is coming up for you?
So I just got out of a long-term relationship, and like this is like a 3.5-year relationship I was in, and you know what? When I was broken up with, his main reasoning was that he felt like I was being very controlling, and that he felt like whenever we would have disagreements or just like things that we were talking about in terms of how we're going to move forward with our lives, it would almost be like I would just present these two I would just present these two options. I would say to him, we have this option, we have this option, and we just got to pick one of these options. And most of the time it was I win, you win. And that's another thing I've been battling, is that I just, I see things very black and white a lot of the times. But I mean, it wasn't just that either. I realized I've been doing this in a lot of my personal relationships that have sort of disintegrated because of it. And, I would sit back and ask myself, well, why is this happening? I feel like I care about these people a lot, and I feel like I tell them that I care a lot. And that the loss of those personal connections is kind of what's leading me to, like, I just don't want that to happen anymore.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Now we're getting into the meat. Unfortunately,
We have a few minutes.
we have a couple minutes. We have a little less than 8 minutes before Blog Talk Radio kicks us off, because we've been doing this test for quite a while. So, if you're talking about personal relationships and communication, that takes it even one step deeper, because now you're not talking about reconciling it within yourself. Now you're talking about it with how do you show up in a way that communicates to the people that you love and that you're in relationship with, particularly like pair bond partners. How do you show up and communicate that these things are important to you when your wiring is encouraging you to behave in ways that don't communicate the full extent of how you feel about them or how much you care about them? So what I heard too is that you have a tendency to have very black and white thinking, which is a very ENT thing, particularly ENTJs. But you have a tendency to have black and white thinking, and you have a tendency, it sounded like when you gave options about what is going to happen, it sounds like you also have a tendency to think in a zero-sum way. Is that accurate? Like somebody loses and somebody wins?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, so there's a couple different things that I would recommend very, very, very quickly. All right, because we have about 6 minutes. All right. So here's the two things. First of all, have you ever heard of game theory?
I don't think I have.
Okay. So, so I always recommend to ENTPs that are developing introverted thinking, I always recommend that they go study formal logic. And the reason why is because it just hones and sharpens the part of their brain that they need to be tapping into in other moments when they need to be clear thinkers. When I talk to NTJs, I almost always recommend looking up game theory. Game theory is related to things like systems theory or systems thinking, which is how do things actually play out? When we're engaged with another person, when we're trying to get an outcome accomplished, but there's all these people involved and you're trying to like go around them and like manipulate them or just get them on your side or persuade them or whatever. What does that all look like? How do you get around people, or how do you get them involved, or how do you get them to buy in, or how do you communicate to them in the way that you need to communicate to them? This is all parts of game theory. And this concept of playing a zero-sum game is all a part of game theory. It's a part of like basically how do we navigate the world while we're trying to get things accomplished, while we're trying to get an end game accomplished. And so my recommendation is to go look that up and go study it. Now, a lot of people don't like the concept of game theory, or they think that that's like it's like very NTJ study, by the way, very, very, very NTJ. But the reason why it's important for somebody to like an NTJ to go study it is not because you necessarily want to adopt everything you learn and start to implement it. It's that you want to start sharpening the saw of the parts of your mind so that when like you'll need the same kinds of thinking and the same kinds of tools to apply it to other contexts. And you'll learn things like what is a zero-sum game and why is it like one of the most unsustainable ways to approach any situation. Zero-sum games are usually unsustainable. If you can't create a win-win, the zero-sum will eventually break down. And I know for ENTJs, sustainability is one of their most important metrics. Now, the other thing I would say after studying game theory is develop your auxiliary function of introverted intuition, because sustainability is going to be the #1 most important thing that you're looking for right now. And that includes sustainability of relationships. So introverted intuition is the calm, quiet part of your mind that helps you understand the patterns of what's going on inside of you and the patterns of what's going on inside of other people. It's the part of you that really understands how other individuals are thinking. If you give a person a black and white possibility, right? Like it's this contrast of black and white thinking and like it's either one thing or another and it's got to be zero sum and one person's got to win and one person's got to lose. It means you didn't do enough thinking. You didn't go far enough inside your own mind to determine what is actually going on here. Like sort of the bigger picture of it. You didn't take in enough terrain. You didn't do enough thought around it, because there's almost always, not always, sometimes there is a zero-sum situation that just develops. But there's usually a third option. There's usually something else that's happening. And my recommendation for ENTJs to really get into that introverted intuition space is start taking baby steps to get to a place where you're doing true meditation. Some of the baby steps you can do is, have you ever used a sensory deprivation tank?
I have not.
Okay. Go set an appointment for a sensory deprivation tank. If 45 minutes sounds like a long time, it's not nearly enough time. You want to go for a little longer. So get yourself like an hour to 90 minutes in a sensory deprivation tank and just let your introverted intuition start to explore. The second thing is take up a meditation practice. It doesn't have to be like an like clear your mind thing. It can be literally anything, but you want to quiet your mind for a percentage of the day so that you can allow all of the things that all the information that's come at you. You want to collate it super, super, super fast. That's what all the ENTJs want to do, is they want to collate it fast and then come to a conclusion. You need to slow everything down. Everything needs to be slowed down. And one of the best ways to do that is to get into a meditation practice. I know you're tagging something, so I'll back up. And you can say
just because we're going to run out of time.
Okay, because we have 2 minutes.
From a practical standpoint in relationships, whether it's romantic or not, one of the skills you can begin practicing also. So what she just recommended is fantastic for your introverted intuition. But a practical thing, a very TE thing for your introverted intuition, so this is an action step, is when somebody tells you something, like, I don't want to do that because this decision is going to X, Y, Z, blah, 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 and they give you their reasons. Stop for a moment and then repeat back to them very carefully their perspective as best you can. And the phrase that I think would be really helpful for you would be to say, so what I hear you saying is, so it's subjective about what you're receiving from them, not trying to project, and then re-articulate as well as you can their perspective back. That's like a framework that I think I've noticed a lot of ENTJs use that little framework. It's so powerful to slow them down and really understand.
90 seconds.
Slow them down, and it helps them understand what's actually being said.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a practical thing.
And it's a fantastic one. We have an ENTJ friend who taught us actually the value of that. What I hear you saying is, and when we are deep in any sort of fight or challenge or argument or whatever, we start to we implement that. We slow everything down and we start to say things like, what I hear you saying is, to make sure that we're not projecting our own stuff onto the other person, that we're not
60 seconds.
that we're not creating these zero-sum games because we think that a situation is less than what it actually was or different than what it was. So we're just about to get cut off, but does that help you at all? Is that at all helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so very much for giving me your time. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Maybe you'll call back in the future and we can spend more time together.
Exactly.
Sorry we're getting cut off. Still technical stuff. So thanks, man, for calling in.
And if we do a meetup anywhere in the area, you've got to come meet us, okay?
Yeah, come hang out.
Yeah, I would love to.
All right, cool.
Thanks for calling, John.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, John.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, so I
right,
think
so-
we've got 25. We've got basically 25 seconds left
hold
on
on.
that. Yeah.
So that's just that.
Mhm.
So you could actually just let that die.
Okay.
It just means no callers can call in.
Right.
But we're still live on the air here. It's still coming to the microphone.
Yep.
So what
10 seconds.
I'd want to do is cut that.
Okay.
Like
Do you want me to
basically,
just end the episode here?
you can, yeah.
I'm
trying to
kind of
think.
curious as to what happens when it just cuts off.
So I'm actually gonna
2, 1, done. And then now we're off the
just
air.
goes off the air. So
Okay.
one thing we can do, because that's got a 2-hour time limit, is we can stop like after about an hour in, we can just take a break.
Mhm.
We can stop the episode, start a new one
That's true.
on
we
that
could.
portion, because the call-in number would be the same.
You're right.
And this could just keep rolling, so we
You're
never
totally
run
right.
out of time.
Yep.
And have that
Yep.
happen again.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we're off the air as far as being able to call in, but I think we had a lot of people coming and going throughout all of this. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for being with us for this test again today. And any comments on there you wanted to read, or everybody's good?
No, I don't really see any comments in here.
Okay, cool. They
Yep.
kind of come in real time, and they're
Yeah.
sometimes wonky.
Yep.
Let us know what you'd like to see on this show. We're going to probably start this up in the fall on a more regular basis. We'll create a season where we have days that we'll have you tune in, and we'll schedule them ahead of time so you know when they're coming. So that way you can make sure you tune in and have your questions ready and call in and stuff. Right now this summer, we're just doing a lot of tests to figure out the logistics and how we'll end up, producing the show over time.
So that
working out all the kinks.
We don't do dumb things like keep GarageBand on and spend 40 minutes trying to figure out what the echo is.
Right. So yeah, let us know your feedback in the comments. And as always, you can come over to personalityhacker.com and hang out with us. Come take your personality test,
Yeah.
find out your personality. We've got a ton of free articles and videos and resources over at Personality Hacker. And ensure to follow some of the social channels. And we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks everybody for being here.
Peace out, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.